Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. We're in a different venue today. We are at the campus of the Southern Utah University in Cedar City with a rather large studio audience for this week's episode of The County Seat. This is part of the Rural Summit, which is an annual event that is held here. Our topic today is going to be the costs of doing business on public lands. Joining us for our conversation is Carl Albrecht, who's the former CEO of Garkane Power, an electric utility in Utah. We have Juan Palma, who is the State Director of the Bureau of Land Management for the state of Utah. Mike Decker, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Gasco Energy Incorporated. And Carl, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Garkane.
Well, Garkane's a rural electric cooperative formed back in 1938. In fact, they're just celebrating their 75th anniversary this year. We serve 6 counties in Utah. All are part of 6 counties in Utah, 2 counties in northern Arizona, 16,000 square mile service territory, all the way from the central part of the state to the north rim of the Grand Canyon.
Okay, Mike, let's talk a little bit about Gasco.
Sure. Gasco Energy is a Denver-based company that was founded in about 1999, went public in 2001, and it has its primary production is in the Uinta County of Utah. We have about 135 gross wells producing about 18 million cubic feet of gas per day and about 200 barrels of liquids. Our office in Utah is located just outside of Mighton. We have 10 employees in Mighton, and then we also have about 15 employees in the Denver office. We're very small, but very glad to be part of the community.
So let's find out a little bit about the BLM from a state level.
Well, the Bureau of Land Management here in Utah manages 23 million acres of land on behalf of all of the citizens. And that's about 46% of the state of Utah is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. We have a budget of about $90 million. And we also have roughly about 800 employees throughout the state of Utah managing the affairs of the Bureau of Land Management across the state.
Okay, very good. I would like to, keeping true with the title of the episode, start about talking a little bit about the interfaces that you have with federal regulators or public land policy. You know, somebody will look at you as a gas developer and they'll probably say, okay, well permits. But what areas do you have to cooperate with the federal government where these costs come in? I'll start with you, Mike.
Yes, we deal with many aspects of the federal government. I've actually have known Juan now for 4 or 5 years now. I've got to be good friends with Juan, and we've worked together quite closely. But we also work together with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Environmental Protection Agency, and these are all agencies that we've dealt with in the past to not only get our permits, but to make sure that we're moving our project forward in a responsible manner.
Okay, Carl, from your standpoint, what kind of interfaces and particular challenges do you have?
Very, very similar to Mike's comments. We also work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Corps of Engineers, as well as the BLM, Forest, Park Service, and all of those government agencies, the monument, the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument as well.
What else goes into, say, getting a gas and well permit? What kind of hurdles do you have to cross?
Well, I'd say one of the largest ones that we've had to do is that other than the main thing is having to follow NEPA and make sure that we have all of our environmental policies in place and so on. But the biggest one that we've had to do is our environmental impact statement. Our environmental impact statement that we completed in 2012 took us 8 years to go ahead and get completed and $2.5 million. That's real money.
Significant money.
Yes, it is.
Carl, what kind of things do you have to worry about in permitting? I understand that he's got to go through a NEPA process and an EIS. Does that affect Garkane as far as, say, new transmission lines and things of that nature?
Very similar again to what Mike said. We proposed a transmission line and we spent 7 years and $2 million before we shoveled dirt. So environmental impact statements, the NEPA process present a lot of problems for us.
We'll dig into the details of some of the costs related and some of the challenges and the setbacks organizations face when they're dealing with public lands. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.
There aren't a lot of places in this world where you can feel truly free and wild, where the horizon invites you to set off on adventure. In Tooele County, you'll find just that. Explore the Benson Grist Mill and step back in time. Find yourself on a trek through our canyons. Tooele County. Experience endless horizons.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? Well, in Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County. Close enough for business. Far enough, get away.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are having a discussion here at the Rural Summit down at Southern Utah University. Our topic today, of course, is the cost of doing business on public lands. Our panelists are on both sides of that table, and we're going to pick up our conversation digging into the details a little bit of what kind of costs are incurred. Just as an example, as I understand it, Juan, the permitting process on federal lands, to say for an oil and gas permit, runs through your agency about 2 years. Is that about correct by the time somebody starts?
Yeah, it depends on the kind of permit that people are looking for. The more complex take a little longer, less complex, definitely a lot less time. But let me just say that public lands is just that, public lands. And the Congress has given us, the Bureau of Land Management, other agencies as well, a charge to make sure that we do things on public lands that benefit all Americans, all citizens across the country. More clearly, it affects our citizens here in the state of Utah. But some of those charges that the Congress has given us is, for example, that we need to provide protection for cultural resources. We need to provide protection for wildlife, for all kinds of other flora and fauna that are on the public lands, and a whole lot of other laws that Congress has given us. So we on the public lands, as we permit this permits, we have to account for what Congress has given us to do. And in order to do that, to do the surveys, to do the quality things that we need to do, it does take a little time, but it takes a little time because these are public lands that need to be accounted for to all American citizens across the country.
The typical gas permit on a state like a Sitla land parcel usually runs about 45 to 60 days. So there's a significant difference there. What accounts for that?
Well, one of the differences, I think, is that the state of Utah does not have a National Environmental Policy Act, where the federal government does. And so that is one difference that creates that time gap, because we, the federal government, do have to comply with the law that Congress gave us, that is the National Environmental Policy Act. It does take a little more time to be able to do that. But I think that's what the Congress has given us, to safeguard these public lands, to make sure that we provide this land endowment for all citizens, and that's what takes a little more time.
Carl, has Garkane ever done an analysis to say the permitting and the regulation, the regulatory compliance that they have to do on public land? Have you ever addressed it to a kilowatt hour, so you can say of what you pay for a kilowatt hour, there's a percentage that is tied up in this?
When I testified before the House Resource Committee in D.C., I calculated the cost of the $2 million spread over our customer base was $148 each. So that's significant in rural Utah, because anytime you add to somebody's power bill, it comes out of their pocket, and it's costly. That's something they would not have to pay. When you give the increases that we get as a result of EPA regulations and so on and so forth, it's significant.
Now, in that, and let's be fair, some of those fees are not directly tied to the permitting process with the BLM, but these are all in all the federal compliances.
You're right, and the Endangered Species Act is probably the most costly to us. The studies and the monitoring that we have to do on a daily basis for the greater sage grouse, the Utah prairie dog, the northern goshawk, the pygmy rabbit, I could go on.
What about from gas, in gas development? If you guys go out to sink wells, have you done a cost analysis on that federal charge?
No, unfortunately, I've not done it on an MCF basis, so I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Okay, well that's fair enough. What kind of time costs are involved as far as your resources? In other words, we understand the permitting time that it takes, but I mean, Juan's got a cost involved in this as well, because you have staff time that takes to meet all of these requirements and regulations. What kind of time costs come out of this?
Well, we have one individual who is in charge of our regulatory process. We then have engineers who will be designing the wells and so on, and be involved in the permitting process. We have a land department to make sure that we're in compliance with the land issues. So with each permit, we'll have 4 or 5 people involved in going ahead and getting this done, just within our office. Then if it's outside the office, then we have the contractors that will go do the surveying. And as Carl was saying, then we also have to look out for, in our area, it's the hookless cactus is one of the big issues, and then raptors. And the hookless cactus is no bigger than the end of your thumb. But it's something that we have to go ahead and monitor. We have to hire botanists to go out and do surveys before we ever move any dessert. And so you have a large community of people out in the Uinta Basin that are helping us go ahead and address this permitting issue.
Juan, what kind of labor impacts do you have in this process? Because this is a two-way street.
It is. And really the two-way is really for all American citizens. We, the Bureau of Land Management in Utah, that we get from Treasury to us every year on our operational budget is about $60 million, what we call management of land and resources. About another $20 million for protection of fire and other kinds of fuel reductions that we do. And so altogether, it's about $90 million of our budget that we get. So that's the contribution of all of our audience that contributes to the Bureau of Land Management. So we also put skin in the game, if you will, for all these projects. So yes, it is true that companies do provide some funding for these projects, not necessarily the BLM, because the BLM is just an entity that manages on behalf of all citizens, but the American public put also to these projects a certain amount of money, such as in our case about $90 million of biologists, of archaeologists, of soil scientists, of all kinds of other individuals, engineers, to help us do these projects.
If there was one specific thing that you could look at from Garkane's point of view to streamline the process or to make things easier, what would it be?
Bring more common sense to the Environmental Species Act. That's a killer for almost anybody that's trying to develop anything, build a power line, drill a gas well or whatever. There is no common sense to that. The pendulum has swung too far one way. It needs to be brought back to the center. And I know that our Congressman Chaffetz and Bishop are working on that, but it's not going to go anywhere. They can pass all the bills they want to in the House, but it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate until things change.
What would you say, Mike, from your standpoint?
Oh, I would definitely agree with Carl. The Endangered Species Act is becoming more onerous all the time. But with that being said, then I also say would be staffing. Staffing with respect to the Vernal BLM office, the field office, and also in Salt Lake City at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office. They all could use additional personnel to help.
So when there's a delay, because there's staffing shortages, and I understand the stresses on Juan's budget and the other agencies, what kind of a financial impact does that end up having on Gasco?
It can have a significant impact because we're having to go ahead and try to get permits, and right now a permit, as you've alluded to early on, can take, we just recently got some permits, took us 18 months to go ahead and get permits. So you really have to plan that far out in advance. But where the impact can come in is if I have to go ahead and contract out a drilling rig, and right now I've got one rig drilling and it's costing about $50,000 a day to operate that drilling rig. And if for some reason I've got a gap in permits where I don't have it tied together, then I'm out whatever long it takes to go ahead and get that that next permit so I can drill the well.
So if you don't have it, what, the rig's going to go to North Dakota or something like that?
No. Most of the time, you sign up for a contract. Maybe it might be 4 wells or whatever, or 5 wells, or even some of the folks up in North Dakota are signing 2-year, 3-year, 4-year contracts. And if for some reason you get a gap, well, then you need to try to either find someone out in the industry that needs a window to go ahead and drill some wells because they have some permits, or else you're going ahead and paying for a day rate of a rig that's going to sit there until you get the permits.
Great. Well, we've started to focus in on some of the challenges that you have in processing through all of this. While we've got the all of these different forces together, when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to put on our thinking caps and perhaps explore some ways that these process may be streamlined and a little bit more friendly to business while protecting the obligations that the federal agencies have for their legal mandate. We'll be right back with the county seat in just a minute.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. Welcome to Yuba Reservoir. Boating, fishing, camping, and ATV trails await your next visit. Join us in Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community. It makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody. When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
There's no need to travel far to find that perfect family adventure. Welcome to Utah's Nebo Loop Scenic Byway. 38 miles of winding highway through the southern end of the Wasatch Mountains. Join us in Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is discussing the costs of doing business on public land. So far, it's conversation's just kind of taken off on its own, and it's actually had a few surprises for me. So let's continue back with looking at ways that we might be able to streamline a process and kind of look at some ideas where we might go. I have to start by saying, Juan, I often get the sense that part of your problem is not from what you would do or could do or would like to do at a state level, but it is further up the chain of command where some of your problems lie. Is that a fair statement to make?
You know, the issues that the BLM faces are numerous, and no one will solve all of the problems. But I do think that if we all work together, we can solve the problems that we face here in Utah, where it's time delays on projects. And I think that working together to me includes not only all of us as citizens, but also includes our Congress. For example, the Bureau of Land Management is one of the top 3 federal agencies that we bring in more money than we spend. In fact, it's 1 to 4. For every dollar that Congress gives us, we bring in $4 to the Treasury. And when you multiply that, it's in the many, many billions of dollars that we bring. And yet, the Congress continues to decline our budget. Our budget here in Utah has declined by about $10 million just in the last 12 months. That doesn't make any sense to me. Those of us that actually can bring more money to the Treasury that can do more oil wells, that can do more of that. We continue to be cut on our budget from the Congress side. We need to work together to be able to address that issue. We also need to address an issue that I cannot resolve it. No matter how many meetings we have, no matter how many conversations we have, I cannot resolve the problem of wilderness study areas. Only the Congress can resolve that issue. And so while we may be at the point of the spear, the Bureau of Land Management here in Utah, there are some issues that are only resolvable by certain levels of our democracy. And I mentioned 2 examples. Our budget. We can do more, and yet to sequester to other means, our budget goes down. So we have less staff. And that is a cycle that we need to be able to work together. So I would say that that is one area that I would like to see improvement upon, but it's not the only one. I think we can do some other things as well.
Mike, do you find that's true, that the staffing problems really mess you up, where otherwise you'd have ducks in a row and willing partners at the BLM?
Yes, I mean, I do believe that, as Juan said, his budget's being cut, and he could use more budget, not only to hire more people, but part of it is retention of people that he loses because they can't pay the same salaries as maybe is out there in the industry, so they lose people out to the industry. And so just trying to retain people, they could go ahead and probably use some salary increases and also some additional personnel to go ahead and help in this process.
Well, Carl, you mentioned that the EPA, the Endangered Species Act rather, was one of your biggest obstacles. How would you fix that?
Let me just say that Juan's a great guy, and I know that Mike and I have worked. If all we had to do was work with Juan and the state office to get something done, we could get it done. It's everybody above him I don't trust. Sorry to say, but that's the way it is. That's the way I feel. And we've got to bring more common sense into Congress. We've got to get them to stick around and work once in a while, and we've got to reform the Endangered Species Act. The EPA is driving people out of business instead of encouraging business. And I don't know what it's going to take, Chad, but it's going to take maybe a revolution in this country to some extent to get people back interested in making the right choices for the right reasons for people, and for this country's not headed in the right direction, in my opinion.
We will be right back with more of the county seat in just a second. We will be talking and wrapping up our conversation. I would like to talk about some basic management principles and see if they would translate from private industry to the public sector, and explore that avenue when we come back in our summary. Thank you for watching the county seat. We'll be back after this commercial break.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing?
September 12th through the 14th, you can find that missing piece at the We Rock Grand Nationals at the Three Peak Recreation Area, just 10 minutes from downtown Cedar City. Catch all the rock crawling action and meet the pro racers in person. 2-day passes are just $25, and kids under 8 get in free. We Rock National Championship, September 12th through the 14th, and visit cedarcityayl.com for all the adventure you can experience in scenic southern Utah.
What's the story of your life? What chapter are you on? Did you happen to get married recently? Perhaps you found your lost puppy at the animal shelter. Or you're taking an art class at the senior center. There's that flu shot that kept you well last season. And don't forget the museums and historical sites your family loves. And all the fun you have at the County Swim Center. County services, from search and rescue to maintaining roads, bring tremendous value to each of our lives. We're the Utah Association of Counties, helping you build the story of your life.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today taking place at SUU in Cedar City, Utah during the Rural Summit. It is a live studio audience taping of the county seat. Our topic has been the cost of doing business on public lands. I've heard this time and time again. The ground level people in the BLM and the state office are very engaged. Mike, what do you think happens further up the line? Why does that disconnect happen?
I'm not certain why it happens, you know, what the cultural difference is, but there is definitely a disconnect. You know, for many of us in the private industry and then working with Juan in the local Vernal BLM office, there's a sense of urgency. Once you go into Washington, D.C., and I went all the way to one step below Secretary Salazar in meeting with people to get our environmental impact statement approved, there is a lack of sense of urgency once you get speaking with these people. One example would be like when we began our EIS under the Bush administration. Within the last year before he left office, nothing was done. And then when under the Obama administration, there was another year lost before they put all the interior staffing in place. We lost 2 years for no reason other than there was going to be a change. I mean, if we did that in the private industry, we'd lose our jobs. And yet we lost 2 full years just because there was no sense of urgency and there was a fear of making decisions that might be wrong under the old administration or be the new administration.
Juan, do you think that there needs to be a new paradigm of courage within some of the federal agencies?
No, I think there is courage in the agencies. You know, I look at all of our managers, some of them are here in the room, and certainly they have courage every single day to make decisions that we make, and depends on what level of the organization we're talking about. One area that I would like to see some discussion about is a law that is called the Federal Advisory Committee Act. This law prevents me from sitting down with a group of individuals to solve a problem. And I scratched my head and I say to myself, if I'm going to solve these problems that we're talking about, I need to be able to sit down with people to solve this problem. I've always believed, my mantra has always been, we meet face to face in order to see eye to eye. We got to do that all of the time. If we're going to create this new world together, then we're going to have to be able to do that. This law does not allow me to do that. I have to do everything via all public participation. And so it's very difficult for some of us and some of our managers to resolve the problems with 5, 6, 7, 12 people in a room sitting down together with a hard conversation. So I believe that if I had a wish, I would wish that all of us would get together, talk about this law, and see where it makes sense that we do to solve the problems of tomorrow.
Thank you for inviting us into your homes. These issues are important. Local government is where your life happens, and we encourage you to be involved and be part of the solution of the problems. Number 2, I would like to invite you to make your way to our website during the next week, and we are going to continue this conversation electronically. And third, I would like to invite you to share it with your friends. Thank you for joining us on the County Seat. We will look for you next week. We'll see you later.
Do you crave adventure? Do you want to escape and find a new world to discover? Do you sit around wondering what to do next? Well, if you answered yes to any of these questions, you need a prescription of At Your Leisure, Saturday nights at 10:30 and Sunday morning at 9 on ABC4 Utah.
If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.